Hey everybody, what's going on? Today I'm going to show you how to set up a Stalwart Mail Server on a Windows 11 computer in Docker Desktop, along with HAProxy to protect it, and we also will have Caddy involved, as well as Cloudflare handling your domain and the API token. Some prerequisites are, number one, you should already have Caddy installed and fully working. If you don't, I will eventually, if not already, have a video on how to do that on this channel too. Number two, have a Cloudflare account managing your domain. Number three, have a Cloudflare API token, which you should have one already if you have Caddy working. Number four, the subdomain CNAME records mail.whateveryourdomain.com and webmail.whateveryourdomain.com that point to whateveryourdomain.com inside Cloudflare. You'll also want Caddy to be routing mail.yourdomain.com to port 8404. I chose this port specifically, but you could change it to whatever you want. You just got to change a lot of things in the settings for this to happen. But for all the files that I provided for you to download, it's going to be for port 8404. Then you also want Caddy routing webmail.whateveryourdomain.com to port 680. Next, you'll want an SMTP2go.com account created. That'll allow you to send mail using an SMTP server that's trusted, and it definitely just skips a lot of the hassle and headache of making your emails junk and all that kind of stuff. I recommend using an advanced text editor, something better than Windows Notepad. And lastly, you'll need these ports open on your router, ports 25, 110, 143, 465, 587, 993, and 4190. And again, if you already had Caddy installed and up and running, you would have ports 80 and 443 open as well. All of the mail ports will be handled and protected by HAProxy, and the HTTP and HTTPS ports will be handled by Caddy. So enough of the intro, let's start with section 1, installing HAProxy, Stalwart, and Roundcube. So I want you to unzip the file I made and place it in a folder in an easy to access location. It's the mailserver.zip right here. You're going to right click and just extract it right here. Go ahead and put in the password I provided, which is JHammaH. Okay, and we have our mail server folder right here. Double click it and we see all the files I already created for you, but we're going to go over them to explain what they are just in case you need to troubleshoot. First one we're going to open is Roundcube. So go ahead and double click and open it inside your text editor, and you're going to replace this section right here. Everything else is okay. It's making a service called Roundcube using Roundcube's image, and we're calling the container Roundcube. And it's always going to restart unless we manually stop it. It's listening to port 680 instead of 80 because 80 is already taken. It's creating a couple volumes for the config and database. And then for the environment, you're going to be telling it, where your mail server is. So for here, I'm going to put mail.mine, which is going to be, for this video, jhamma.me. And then mail, replace this one down here, .jhamma.me. Once you do that, Control S, and then you can close this because we don't need to go back into that one again. Once you've done that, go ahead and right click anywhere in an open spot on your folder and then do open in terminal, the Windows command. This is going to open PowerShell, and we're going to type in docker-compose space up space -d. And what that is going to do, that's going to look for any Docker Compose files in the folder that you are currently in. So we are in the mail server folder, and it's going to start the install process for those containers. And then if we have the -d here, it's going to do it in the background, and it's not going to use your currently open PowerShell window as your container itself. So we hit enter, and we see it's going to be pulling the Stalwart file, the HAProxy and Roundcube file, those images, and it's going to install them. Okay, and after about 30 seconds, it's totally done. We see that all of the containers were created, as well as the custom HAP network that we have created, which I'll go over that here in a little bit. So now let's open Docker, and we shall see our mail server now with all of our containers underneath it. So they're all inside the mail server stack. So we're going to want to find Stalwart's logs. Now, it's important to know how to check for logs in troubleshooting processes. For the HAProxy and the Roundcube container, those logs are going to be updated live inside of Docker. For Stalwart's, you're only going to get the initial logs, which is going to show you your credentials, and then all of the other logs are not going to be live. You have to manually look for those inside the Stalwart data folder, which I'll show you in a little bit. So to start this off, if you want to check logs, you find the container you want, go over to the three dots, and then click View Details. Once you do that, it's going to show you your logs right here. The only two logs that this container is going to show are these ones. It's going to tell you all your configuration where it was written to on a TOML file, and then your administrator account username and password. You can go ahead and double click and copy that password and then open your web browser. In here, we're going to go to localhost 7080 because that is the port we mapped Stalwart to. Speaking of, before we go any further, let me go ahead and show you the compose file itself. So if we open the initial compose file, our YAML file is going to immediately look for two more, Stalwart and roundcube, and it's going to include these files. But it's not going to do anything with them until this is completely finished. So it's going to start a service called HAProxy container, and it's going to take the Alpine HAProxy image. We're going to call the container HAProxy, and we're going to give this container also the host name of HAProxy. It's always going to restart unless we stop it. And then for the volumes, we are mounting it inside the current folder that the docker-compose file is located in. That's what the // is for. And then it's going to look for HAProxy config. So it's going to be looking for a configuration file in the current folder of this docker-compose YAML. That's why we're going to see that down there. And then it's going to bind it to the HAProxy config file inside of the container's OS. Skipping down to the networks real fast. The network we made is called HAP network. We gave it the name of HAP network. We made the driver a bridge, and then we made the IPAM driver default. Configuration, we configured the subnet to be 172.30 range, and then the gateway 172.30.0.1. Now, if 172.30 is taken for you already, you might want to change this to 31, 32, or something like that as well. Then you'll have to update that in the rest of the containers as well, and the YAML files, so things don't break. But if 30 is available for you, then this is going to work great. So 172.30.0.10 is what we gave the IP address of this specific HAProxy container. And now for ports, these are the ones we are binding to HAProxy's container. Since 80 and 443 are already bound to Caddy, we're just going to say, hey, listen for these two ports on 6080 and 6443 instead. We're going to bind 8404 on here as well. And then we're binding ports 25, 143, 465, 587, 993, and 4190. And then this container, we're going to put it depends on Stalwart as well. So it can talk to the Stalwart container that's going to be created by this Stalwart YAML. So now let's open up that Stalwart YAML real quick. When we open that up, it has a service being created, and that service container name is Stalwart. It's taking the latest Stalwart image. We're calling this container name Stalwart, so HAProxy can talk and reference it directly. And it's always going to restart unless we stop it. And for ports, the only one we're going to bind, and this is for the admin web UI, is 7080 to 8080, because 8080 is taken by another container of mine. So 7080 is what we're going to be doing to log into this web UI. For the volumes, it's going to create a folder called Stalwart Mail, and that's where it's going to put all its configuration and files and logs in the current directory of wherever stalwart.yml is. So // Stalwart Mail, that means a folder is going to be created inside here. Networks, we're going to throw it on the HAP network and give it an IP address of 172.30.0.5. So now HAProxy and Stalwart are on the same network. Finally, let's reopen roundcube just to take a look at that again. We have it bound to port 680, so that's the port you want to go to log into the webmail. Everything else is identical to what we looked at earlier, and we threw it on the HAP network, but we don't care what IP address it has, so it's just going to give one at random. It doesn't actually even need to be on the HAP network. I just did it so it didn't create its own network when the container was created, because that would just be one extra network that's really unneeded. So I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to close this one. Now let's go back to our Stalwart web UI, and we're going to log in with the admin credentials and passwords that you saw in the logs. Hit sign in, and you're in. First thing you want to do is make a fallback administrator. So we go down to settings, and we go down to authentication, and then settings. Then we can create a fallback admin just in case you forget that admin password or those logs get deleted for whatever reason and you can't see that password anymore. So I'm going to make a backup administrator right here. How about SY Films, and the password is going to be password123. Just kidding, it's definitely not that. Save and reload, and we're good. We're going to be saving and reloading a lot. Next, we're going to go over to security, and we're going to do allowed IPs, and we're going to create an IP address range to always allow, because sometimes Stalwart likes to block IP ranges. So we're going to say, hey, our new HAP network at 172.30.00/16, we want you to allow every single IP address that starts with 172.30. So we're going to say save and reload, and now we have an allowed IP range. On to the next section. We are going to be configuring the SMTP settings. So we're in the settings area. We're going to go to SMTP, and then we're going to go down to outbound, and then we're going to go down to relay hosts. Now this is where we're going to enter all of our SMTP to go settings. This is what I'm using. It makes all your emails very trustworthy, and it gives you 1,000 free ones a month for their free plan, and that's plenty of emails for me. The only thing you got to make sure you do is verify the sender address, so add your domain into a verified sender inside SMTP to go. When you do that, it's going to give you a couple CNAMEs to put in your DNS records for your domain. Back to relay hosts, we're going to create a new host. We're going to call this one SMTP to go. For the address, we're going to do mail.smtp to go. For the port, we're going to do 587. Mode protocol is SMTP. And then you're going to put in your SMTP to go username and secret password for the account that you made and linked to SMTP to go. Username, password, and then save and reload. And once you've done that, your relay host is created. Next thing is go back under the outbound settings and go to routing, and we're going to tell it the next hop, which the next hop we do immediately will be apostrophe SMTP to go apostrophe, and then go down, save and reload. Now when you're using relays, you do have to disable a couple of things. Over in the TLS section, we want to disable DANE by just taking what's optional in there and typing disabled, and then MTA-STS, disabled. Then save and reload. Now all of the SMTP stuff is done. So we're going to go down to our server, go to the network, and we need to add our host name as our network settings. Now this is going to be your mail server's domain. So mine, remember what we put in roundcube earlier, that's what we want to make sure it's the same thing. Mine is mail.jhamma.me. And then once you put that in there, save and reload. Hit OK. And now on to configuring the reverse proxy routing. So because we're using a reverse proxy, or two in this case, we'll want to make sure to add the HAP network as a trusty proxy network inside Stalwart so it allows access to and from the mail server. So under settings, network, you'll see this option right here. Go ahead and add. We are going to add this network, again our HAP network, 172.30.0/16. And then once we've done that, we are going to scroll down, hit save and reload. So before we go any further, I'm going to show you how to add the CNAME record just in case you don't have it already. I'm going to go to my Cloudflare account, then I'm going to choose my domain, then I'm going to go to my DNS records, hit add record, and then I'm going to drop down the type and go to CNAME, and then I'm going to type mail, and then I'm going to put an @ symbol to put at mydomain.com. Make sure it's not proxied, and then hit save, and then do it one more time with webmail. Webmail, @ not proxied, save. Okay. So now back in Caddy, you should already have Caddy pointing at these two websites, but if you don't already, I have an example of how that should look, and it'll look like this. So this one's going to be JHammaH.me. It's going to point to port 8404. Now, we're going to be doing that specifically because that means it's going to go directly to HAProxy. Then HAProxy is going to send everything to the Stalwart Mail Server. So for this long thing of hashtags, that's where you're going to be pasting your long Cloudflare API token. So I already have this up in the top. I'm going to remove that. And then I'm going to paste my token right here. I already have my token stored in an environmental variable. We're actually going to change this from 127.001 because it don't like that. So you're going to have to tell it the LAN address. So my host computer's IP address for this server is 192.168.0.250. So once I've done that, Control S, and then we can minimize Caddy's Caddy file. So now that we have that routed, let's open up the HAProxy config file so I can show you that. So the HAProxy config file, this is HAProxy's whole reverse proxy. So we have a couple of default options in here: daemon, max connections, logging, mode, TCP for mail by default, unless specified otherwise, bunch of timeouts and whatnot. And then we go down to the listen stats. This is for the stats page that we can create. We're binding any IP to this port 8405, and if we go to localhost 8405, so we can see a bunch of stats for all of our connections going to and from HAProxy. So down here in the front end, we are binding 0.0.0.0 to ports 25, and then 143, 465, 587, 993, and 4190. We are making sure the mode is TCP, so all the mail flow is going to be going right to this. It's listening for these due to our container binding to the ports, as well as the configuration binding to the ports. And now if it detects anything going to these ports, it's going to send to our default backend called back Stalwart. So that means down here, it's going to be like, oh, cool, you sent me something. Now I'm going to go ahead and transfer that to the server that is called Mail Server, which is Stalwart. Now remember, because HAProxy and Stalwart are on the same HAP network, we can use the container name instead of Stalwart's Docker IP address. So it's going to send any request it sees here, since it's bound to these IP addresses, to Stalwart's backend. Stalwart's backend is going to be the mail server Stalwart, and so it's just going to send them proxied. So proxied means it's going to keep a bunch of the IP information that was initially sent to it. It's going to proxy it over. So it's better for logging and things like that. So those are all the settings for the mail. Now here are all the settings for the HTTP portion. So it has a front end called front UI. The UI is Stalwart's UI. We're just naming it this. The mode is HTTP, so it's not looking for mail stuff. We're binding any IP address to 8404, which is what we made our Caddy file point to. So if mail.jhamma.me gets put in the web browser, it's going to hit Caddy immediately. Caddy is then going to route it to HAProxy through this port, 8404. Once HAProxy sees Caddy's message, it's going to be like, hey, oh dang, you just sent me this to 8404. I am going to log it, and then put some logs out here as well, just in case you need to read it, and then send this request to the default backend for the UI that's created, back Stalwart UI. Now once I send this request to the back UI, the mode is still HTTP. It's going to log it some more, and then it's going to send it to the server, which we defined as Stalwart UI server, to Stalwart's Docker IP address. Now, this can just be Stalwart if we wanted, but I'm just putting this here to visualize it to see you can put it both ways. So if you remember in the YAML file, we manually assigned Stalwart's container to be 172.30.0.5. And now once it detects a request from the front end, and then it's going to pass it to the back end, it's now going to reroute it to port 7080, which will allow you to log into Stalwart's UI, which we have mapped to port 7080. Now, before all this is going to fully work, we do need to make a couple changes in Stalwart's TOML file. So if we open up the mail server folder that we have, we now see that Stalwart Mail has been created as well as roundcube. That's because of our containers and our YAML files. So all of Stalwart's mail server settings are in here. And we're going to open up this folder, go into etc, and we're going to see our config.toml file. Double click that, open it up, and we're going to see all of our information here on the back end. We are going to need to make a couple of changes or additions. So the first change we're going to make is the server listener IP bind. We mapped everything to 7080, so we need to change the HTTP listener from 8080 to 7080. Next, we need to tell Stalwart to listen for proxy protocols, because that's what we have enabled in HAProxy, which allows us to send more detailed information to Stalwart. So we want to add these things in there. So if we go down to where we see the HTTP listener protocol right down here, underneath it, we're going to add a new line. We're going to type server.listener.proxy-protocol space =, space true. Now, to make it easier, I would copy and paste this because we're going to add it one more time in a different spot, but change some things around. Next, we're going to go down to listener IMAP TLS. Listener IMAP TLS. We have the protocol IMAP right here. We're going to do a new line underneath this, paste, and we're going to change this right here from HTTP to IMAP TLS. So we have server.listener.imaptls.proxy-protocol = true. So those are the three changes we made. We changed the server listener to 7080. We told it to listen to proxy protocols for HTTP, and we told it to listen to proxy protocols for IMAP TLS mail flow. So we hit save. We need to go down to Docker. We need to go back to Stalwart, and we're going to stop it, and we're going to restart it. So now all of these settings are implemented. So if we go back to the Stalwart Mail Server, we refresh this, it's not going to like it. We're like, hey, localhost, what is that? I'm not allowing this to go here. But if we go to mail.jhammaH.me and hit enter, and we're here. So now we are accessing our Stalwart Mail Server through Caddy and HAProxy using proxy protocol. On to the next section, which is configuring SSL certificates and ACME. So go ahead and log in with your admin or your backup user. And then we're going to go down to Settings, TLS, ACME Providers. Here, we're going to add our Let's Encrypt ACME provider. So we're going to type Let's for the directory ID because of Let's Encrypt. Change the challenge type to DNS01. Contact email, we're going to have to add that right there. And then we're going to put in what our future email address is going to be. So mine's just going to be josh@jhamma.me. And then for the subject and name, we're going to have to add one of those too. And that's going to be this web server address, mail.jhamma.me. And then once we do that, we're going to scroll down to the DNS settings, change this DNS provider from RFC to Cloudflare, and we're going to put in our Cloudflare API token. Once you put that token in there, hit save and reload. After you've done this, you do have to restart Stalwart's mail container. So go back to Docker and find Stalwart, check it, stop. And once it stops, start it again. Cool. Now we're on to the next section, configuring your domain and DNS settings. So let's go ahead and add your first domain. So go down to the management. I'm going to go to directory, domains. Click add your first domain. And now we're finally at the part where we can add our domain, JHammaH.me. And then once we do that, hit save changes. And now once you've made that, it'll be right here on this list. On the right-hand side, there are 3 dots. You're going to click those 3 dots and go to View DNS Records. So here are where all the DNS records are going to be. If you scroll down, you can actually see they're on this big thing called a zone file, which allows you to select everything, copy, and then paste it as a text file. So you see I have your yourdomain.com zones text, right? I'm going to rename this to JHammaH.me zones, double click it, paste it, save it, close it. Now the reason I'm labeling it is because if you want to add multiple domains to this mail server, so instead of just emailing right out of your one domain, you could have multiple zones for multiple different domains you're going to be putting for DNS records. So just for easy identification purposes, I'm putting JHammaH.me's zones. Once you've done that, go to Cloudflare, and then in the DNS settings, you're going to see an import and export option. Click this, and then you're going to select a file. Navigate to your mail server folder, and then you're going to find your zone file, hit open, and then upload. And then it imports all of these records perfectly. Now it might take up to a few minutes for these to all sync over completely, so we can just close this. We no longer need to be in Cloudflare or SMTP to go. So now we have our DNS records syncing over to Cloudflare. So let's configure our domain account. So let's go to an account, create a new account, and we're going to call this one, for the login name, I like to use the email address as the login name. You can make it just a login name yourself if you wanted. That's totally cool. But I'm just going to put josh@jhammaH.me. Copy and paste it under the email as well. Full name, I'm just going to put Josh. And then for the authentication tab up here, you're going to put in a password. Definitely want one of those. My password's definitely password123 for sure. Hit save changes. And now we have an account. Cool. Now for the final section, we are testing all of this with Roundcube as our easy email client we can do. So inside your Caddy file, you should already be pointing webmail dot whatever your domain is dot me, well, .com could be for you, doesn't matter. That should already be pointing to Roundcube's login. And now inside the Roundcube YAML, we already told it what server to look for and what ports to look for that server. So now we should just put in our account we just created. Josh@jhammaH.me. Secure password. And we're able to log in. So we are officially logged in to our custom mail server that we're hosting, which is super protected by HAProxy and Stalwart and Caddy. So now for the testing, there's some cool websites we can use. So let's open up a new tab and go to sendtestemail.com. Here we can tell it, hey, see if my email's working. Let's send an email to our new account, josh@jhammaH.me. Send a test. Successfully sent the test. Cool. So let's go ahead and look. It should auto refresh like every 5 seconds, but you can manually hit refresh here too. Inbox. Landed. Look at that. We received an email. If you're reading this, your email address is working. Cool. But that's only one half. Let's see if sending works. Now let's go to this website right here. We're going to go to mail-tester.com. And in here, we are going to send an email to this randomly generated email address. So copy it, go back to roundcube, go to compose. We're going to do to them test. Again, test email from my new server. Hello, this is just a test. Send. Message successfully sent. Refresh. Okay, I don't see a rejection anymore. So that's good. Let's go to this website, and then we need to check our score. And so if it received our email, it's going to rate it. Hey, it received our email and rated it a perfect 10 out of 10 email, which is great because that means Spam Assassin likes us. That guy's cool. And then we have we're properly authenticated. Our message is safe and well formatted. We're not blocklisted. Check that out. It's pretty awesome. So we did it. If you're at this screen right now in the tutorial, you're 100% up and running and working. You have successfully self-hosted a mail server and protected it with a reverse proxy inside Docker on a Windows machine, or you may not be on a Windows machine. You could just be using this or any parts of this tutorial to help you out if you're in your specific scenario. So if this tutorial did help you out, and if you're feeling generous, you can buy me a coffee. That'd be totally awesome using the link below, and that'll help me make more tutorials. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great one.